All right. Welcome to the first GreenCourt Connections episode of 2026. I'm your host, Jay Bland, and it's so good to see you again. It's been way too long, my friends. We're going to shake it up this year. So if you don't like shaking things up, this is not the year for you. Last year, we focused on learning more about journeys to the top from our friends in government agencies and courts. And this year, we're going to zoom in a little bit, and we're going to specifically focus on the topic of leadership. Specifically, our title and theme this year for the podcast will be Beyond the Title, Why Leadership is About Responsibility, Not a Reward for Good Work, that's a hard-hitting theme right there. We're going to begin this series today with one of my friends and mentor and somebody who knows just a ton about leadership and exhibits those qualities in his day-to-day life, Gabe Smith. So Gabe, I appreciate you joining us today. You know, what we're going to do is we're going to unpack some topics with Gabe, and then the rest of the episodes this year will be interviews with leaders in government agencies and courts, where we will talk about some of the things that Gabe and I talk about today. So this is episode 1 in a new series. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Hey, so great to be here. I've been a listener for a while now, so an honor to be right here with you, Jay.
Man, you're one of 24 listeners we have, so we're grateful for all 24 of you out there. Man, it's so good to see you. The beard looks great. This is my first time using the headphones, so I was a little bit worried.
You look like a pro, man.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried it'd mess up my hair. You know, the hair is all I got. So make sure we're doing okay.
Not a problem I have, but you're looking good, man. You're looking more professional. I think it's going to be the best year yet of the podcast.
I think so, man. Well, Gabe, let's just kick this thing off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a native Charlottean from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is in and of itself kind of a rare thing. Most people are transplants to our city now, but I was born and raised. So is my wife, been married 27 years. Have one daughter, 19-year-old freshman in college. And so, you know, personally navigating a personal leadership transformation, transition, becoming an empty nester in a different season of life. My background professionally is went to West Point out of high school. That's kind of where I cut my teeth in leadership. That's just kind of a leadership incubator for 4 years. You're just immersed in it. And so, you know, I had the privilege of starting to lead people super early in my life from age 17, and becoming a student of leadership as well. And that translated into an almost 8-year active duty career as an infantry officer in the Army, where I had, again, just the privilege of leading, you know, America's sons and daughters in combat, and doing so at an early age. So I just, you know, I think one of the gifts of the military for me was just a lot of reps in leadership very quickly. So from like age 17 to age 30, kind of that was my formative years in leadership, and just got a lot of reps in the military, and then transitioned into some nonprofit work. After that, moved to Cape Town, South Africa. Built an organization there, figured out I'm an entrepreneur. And then for the last 10 years, I've been doing what I'm doing now, which is coming alongside senior leaders and organizations to help them optimize their leadership and their organizations, which is what I've found my passion. You know, this is just what I love doing is coming alongside other leaders and teaching and mentoring and just being with, because I think that's a big part of it too, is we all need people on the journey with us. And that's how, Jay, you and I have got to know each other, is just journeying together through this crazy leadership journey at GreenCourt the last year or so.
Man, it is a journey, right? When we talk a lot about, you know, the goal is to become a work in progress. I've been to so many conferences and listened to podcasts where you talk to people who think they have it all figured out, and they give this aura that they've already figured it all out. And you and I share a belief that that's really never true. You know, you the goal is to be a work in progress.
That's right. Yeah, it's not about arrival. And I do think like that's a major paradigm shift, is that I think it creates a lot of anxiety and shame in the hearts of leaders when you believe fundamentally like it's about arriving. And then you think there's other people who've arrived. But inside we all know, well, I haven't arrived. I'm a mess.
Yeah, it's man, one thing that really changed my direction is realizing that nobody has it figured out. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, everybody's doing not everybody's doing the best they can, but a lot of people are doing the best they
Yeah,
can.
that's right.
And you just get up and do it again the next day. And, you know, that's very comforting to know you're not chasing some level of perfection or some
Yeah.
achievement. I actually really enjoy what I enjoy about the leadership topic so much is there is no end goal. It's
Hmm.
a it's a game that doesn't have a clock,
Yeah.
right? But the clock
Right.
is ticking because
Right.
you know the people you are around, you know, they benefit from good leadership. So I think
Hmm.
what I'd like to do is you and I share some of the same thoughts here, but quite simply, put very simply, what is your definition of leadership?
Yeah, so I like steal a lot of this from the army because again, that's where I was formed, and I think the military just has a way of cutting to the chase.
Mhm.
So I think leadership's the activity of influencing people by providing three things: purpose, direction, and motivation, for the outcome of improving the organization, and achieving the mission.
So the three things there: purpose, direction, and motivation. And
Yeah.
the word that sticks out to me because we share this word a lot when we're describing leadership is influence, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you know, I think what I would love this year for people to realize is people who listen to this, all 24, 25 people, is that you know you are going to influence people every day, whether you want to or not,
That's right.
and and you have the decision if you're going to influence them positively or negatively, right?
Mm. Yes.
And I just think I look around the world and you know my goal this year on this podcast is to never get into politics, so we're not going to do that. But if you just open your eyes, if you just open your eyes, you see a lot of chaos, right? There's a
Yeah.
ton of chaos going on,
Oh man.
and you know, for our friends who went to WICSEC last year, they got to hear you do a plenary session on the idea of this leading through chaos.
Hmm.
So I want to dive into that a little bit more today. I know there's a long version, there's a medium version, there's a short version. So
Yeah.
you know, you pick whichever one you think is most appropriate for today. I love the story, but the idea of you know, for our government agencies and courts out there, no matter where you fall politically, it's a fact that it's chaotic, right?
Yeah.
Things are changing, budgets are getting cut. Sometimes you're having to deal with personnel issues, and people are looking at leadership positions to provide them with guidance, right? With
Yeah.
purpose, with motivation, with support. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how you can effectively lead through chaos.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is what you said, Jay, is just this, I guess, realization. And I always say like the first job of leadership is defining reality. Like we have to be the ones that live in reality, which is tough, right? Because reality is not fun a lot of the time. And I think like one of the meta realities just in life and leadership and business is that chaos is always coming. Like it's right. If you're not in it, it's around the corner. Um, and I think I actually gave a talk to senior leaders at a big organization earlier this week, and we were talking about how to navigate chaos through the lens of this idea of resilient leadership. And I do think like that's a goal, right? Is that like this idea if chaos is always coming, then the question is who do we need to be as leaders? Like, and I do think leadership is mostly the art of becoming. We like to think of it as like the action of doing, but I think it's really about like who are you becoming? And so as I've thought about like how do you navigate chaos that's inevitable, I think there's this big principle that you've got to become a resilient leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's true, and that is chaos is coming.
Hmm.
And sometimes you know, it's difficult personally whenever things seem to be going really well. there's this
Yeah.
little piece of me, and I hate it, but there's a little piece of me being like, don't get too used to this because
Right.
some stuff is going to go down, right?
That's right.
And you got to be careful not to let that take away from enjoying the good times, right? You got to stop and smell the
Mhm.
roses. But yeah, the idea that chaos is coming is, and whatever your definition may be, right?
Yeah,
Depending on what industry you work in, it could be professional, it could be personal, but
sure.
chaos is coming. You know, you talk a little bit about this idea of the art of becoming. So it's
Mhm.
not a thing you do; it's something you become. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to what we started the conversation with of like it's a journey, not a
Mhm.
destination. And the journey is like, how do you know whether you're succeeding? Like if there's not an arrival point, how
Right,
do I know if I'm doing it right?
right,
And I think it's really wrapped around like who am I becoming as a person, as a human being, and as a leader? Um, and that's not a line, that's a circle. Like that's iterations. Like we're constantly becoming because chaos is our context, right? Like whether that's personal chaos, whether that's and let's just define chaos as disruption.
yeah,
Like it's disruption that we don't expect, and that's just the nature of the world that we operate in. And so this idea that like who are we becoming, which I think comes down to two things, is like our identity. So who do you believe that you are, and like what is that rooted in? Because I meet so many leaders that I think anxiety and shame and like difficulty navigating hard things in leadership, it's because they don't really know who they are. It's because who they are is tied to what they do. And I think you were getting at that in this year's theme of like, man, we've got to get away from titles being tied to identity. And I think something's tied to your identity when that thing is like stripped from you or threatened in some way. And then like what you feel like this hyper vigilant negative reaction. And I think that's a red light dashboard indicator that, hey, maybe your identity is tied up too much in your title, your job, what you're doing. So I think the first part of becoming is rooted, is getting a rooted identity in something that's more stable,
mm.
than your current job, because that's not stable at all, you know.
Yeah. It's not, and you see that, and we've talked about this before, but you see that with people when they retire
Hmm.
and they realize that their identity was their work, right?
That's right.
And they're miserable.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and then I think the second thing that flow, and by the way, identity is in I am statements, like I am blank,
Right.
so if listeners want to kind of do an exercise, like who do you think you are? And then like what is that? And I think it's story, right? It's like what's the story about you and who you are? But I believe that all people are made with incredible value, and that we all have that we're all 100% unique. Like there's nobody like each one of us in the world, and we each have like unique gifts. And so like, our identity needs to be rooted in statements like that. Like
Mm.
I'm incredibly unique, or I am an entrepreneur, creative thinker, things like that. But the second thing that I think flows out of identity is our values, is like and values, I think that's an overused word in business. We think of like what's on the website, like what do we, stick up on the wall in the headquarters, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when I say is your personal values, your leadership values, that's what matters most to you. And your values become a compass that guides you along the journey. And I think as you're in the process of becoming as a leader, what happens is your values get clearer and sharper. And I know, Jay, that's something you and I have worked
Mm.
on, this year in your leadership. That's been super fun, is
Yeah.
thinking through, hey, at this life stage, who am I and what's important to me?
Yeah. And what I've been able to do, and it's so refreshing, is no matter what my title is, no matter what my job is, I have dedicated to forever being an effective leader who puts people before self, and helps people on their journey. Right? No
Hmm.
matter, it doesn't matter what my title is.
That's right.
It doesn't matter where I'm working. You can do that. right? You
Yes.
you can, no matter what, you can decide to intentionally put work in to be a good leader and pair that with action, right?
Hmm.
Just the desire to be it is half the battle.
That's right.
Right? You got to pair it with action. You got to wake up every day and put work into it.
Hmm.
And then you can see that transformation. And for me, tying myself to something like that in a
Hmm.
professional sense, is a lot better than tying myself to revenue goals or
Yeah,
projections from the board. Although those things are important, you
sure.
can't throw those things out. But
Yeah,
you can't tie your self worth to something that's so fragile.
yeah. No, I'm curious, Jay, for you, like as you got a more settled sense of who you are and what's important to you, because you've done the work, this year. If you guys don't know Jay Bland, he's the real deal. Um, he practices what he preaches. I can tell you that. But like as you've done that hard work this year and named who you are and what's important, like what benefit has that had for you as you've navigated the inevitable chaos of your world?
Man, what a great question. And thank you for the shout out. Peace,
Mm,
I think, would be the word. And the ability to enjoy the ride. That's
mm,
really what I've been focusing on.
yeah,
For so long, it's been do one thing, do the next thing, get to the next thing, get this done, do this,
yeah,
knock this one on one off the list, move on to this. And there were days I'd have a full calendar. I would finish my day and I would have no sense of gratification. I'm
mm,
like, I did a lot of stuff, but I did nothing, right?
yeah,
Because I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't have my own scoreboard to tie to success. So today,
yeah,
when I finished the day and I'm like, man, I helped that person navigate that difficult situation. I showed up in a time of chaos and helped
mm,
lead my team through it, while owning my own wake, which I want to talk about in
yeah,
a minute. That's
yeah,
important.
yeah.
I'm able to have a successful day based on things that I can control.
Hmm.
That's the key.
Yeah.
As
Yes.
long as you're basing success on things you cannot control, your life will look like the stock market.
That's right. Man, that's such a great lesson. We talk about that in the circles of concern. It's like write
Yeah.
down all the stuff that concerns you, which is going to be a ton of stuff. Then, like out of that list, like what can you influence to go back to our influence where that's a smaller list. But then at the smallest circle in all that is like the stuff I can control.
Mm.
And man, when you do that exercise, as you did in this season, it's like, man, I can't control that much. So I can just settle down with like letting a lot of stuff go.
No, you can't. And a lot of people want to, and a lot of people try to, and you can see those people operate.
Yeah.
They are, they lead with emotion and not the
Hmm.
good kind. I don't mean they lead with heart. I mean they lead with whatever emotion they're feeling in that moment. And I
Hmm.
think an inconsistent leader is no leader at all. Like you've
That's
got
right.
to show up. You've got to show up. You've got to take inventory of yourself. You got to show up and know how you're showing up and own how you're showing up.
Hmm.
And you and I have talked about this idea of owning your wake before, which I love.
Yeah.
It unlocked something in me, and that is like, yeah, you're allowed to have a bad day. Like
Hmm.
leaders have bad days.
Of course.
But what I've found for me that works is the right way to do that is to admit it and sometimes even admit it to my team.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, let's do a check in. I'm at like a 5 out of 10 because I got some stuff going on. So I want you to know that. So if there's any grace you can afford to give me today, I need it. Right? That's
Oh
just
man.
way bet that bit of vulnerability. Everybody on your team kind of sits back, right? And they're like, okay,
Hmm.
well, we're going to give him some grace today. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
is showing up and trying to hide it or mask it
Yeah.
or not at all, just being angry with everybody, right?
Right.
And that creates a wake. If you're, and we're going to talk about, I want to circle back to the fact that everybody's a leader, but if you're in a
Hmm.
leadership position, let's say your wake, which is behind you, right?
Yeah.
Um, you've got to understand how powerful that is. So you
Yeah.
may say, just out of left field, may say something to somebody and say something to somebody else, and you can absolutely ruin their week.
Hmm.
And it took you 2 seconds to say it, and you didn't think twice about it. But because of your position and because of how these people view you, you've changed the direction. You've influenced their day or week negatively.
Yeah.
So the idea of owning your wake is something you and I've talked about a lot.
Oh man. Yeah. I think back to the glory days when I lived on Lake Hartwell down in Clemson, South Carolina. And we had a little boat, but we lived in this cove, and there was a bunch of college students that kept their boats in the cove. And I remember they would like not own their wake. Like these guys would come on these giant wakeboard boats, come screaming in there. And the thing is they're just focused on what's ahead, right? Like they're just like, man, I want to get out there and start having fun. I want to pop open the cooler. I want to do, and so they're not paying attention to your point to what's behind them. That like, man, you're driving 40 miles an hour through this little cove, and your wake is causing all this disruption, on my dock.
Right.
And we couldn't stand those kids. But I think that's what happens in leadership, to your point, is I think we become so focused on like what's ahead. And our organizational life drives that, right? Because what we're rewarded for is like performance and like going faster, getting more done, which is all future oriented stuff, which is great. And so we kick that throttle up, and our vision is straight ahead, man, full throttle, full ahead, eyes full ahead. And we're going, that's great. That's leadership. And then to your point, we forget that, man, there's a whole bunch of people depending on us behind us. And man, sometimes when we're moving full throttle, to your point, we're not operating in our values. We're not operating in kindness. We're not operating with awareness. And what happens is, man, that we create a destructive wake behind us. So I think the trick is, man, you got to have your head on a swivel as a leader. You got to look forward, yes, but you got to look back and be aware of that throttle,
You do. You absolutely do. And, disclaimer, I didn't own my wake in college either. So I'm sure those kids ended up being great people.
Did anybody?
Yeah. And I think you're dead on there. And this is something that, man, talk about a work in progress. This is something that you don't unlock. You have to do every day, because I will. And the biggest thing for me putting this into action, and folks who lead government agencies and courts can relate to this too. Like when you're getting pressure from whoever is above you,
Yeah.
To finish a project or raise customer success rates or whatever the metric may be. When you're getting that pressure, you've got to be so careful on how you unleash that pressure on the people below you. And that, for me, that's the hardest thing to do, because I don't think adding stress and anxiety to people is a good motivator at all.
No.
I'm a big fan of informing people. Like I'll tell my team all the time, like, hey, this is really important, and I know you know that, and let's talk about ways we can get there together. But just, copying and pasting the stress that you have onto your team does nothing at all besides create negative effects.
No, that's 100%. Yeah, I think a value I've embraced in this season of my life is that you never get a pass on kindness, and for me, that just has become an anchor reality that, like, no matter what, I don't get to excuse myself from kindness. Because the deal is, like, kindness and being nice aren't the same thing, right? Clarity is actually kindness. So I'm being, kindness gives me the ability to be direct, to be honest, to be transparent, to say hard things, but it's with a heart and a spirit that's like, I'm for you as a human being,
Right.
I'm aware of like your emotions and all the impact of my words and all these things. And I think it's like little things like that can really like shape your leadership in a powerful way.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, Patrick Lencioni talks about this a lot, and I love, shout out to Patrick Lencioni, who gives
Me
us
too.
a lot
Love
of
that guy.
ideas, to talk about. But, the title this year for this podcast about leadership being a responsibility and not a reward for good work is something I want to unpack, because I see this all the time, and I was a victim of this. So this is not me passing judgment. This is me saying I did this too. And
Yeah.
the idea is, okay, you get that promotion. So you may work in a child support organization, and you move from caseworker to supervisor 2, and you think, whew, yeah, like now I got it. right? Now everybody's got to listen to me. Now everybody's got to respect me. And now I can only do the things that I enjoy doing because this is a
Mm,
reward. I've earned the
right.
reward and the right to only do what I enjoy doing. You see that a lot in leadership. And what happens is leaders avoid tough conversations.
Hmm.
So they don't, if they don't enjoy them, they avoid them. And they
Yep.
avoid them because they think they're allowed to not do things they don't like to do anymore.
Yep.
That's the opposite. And that's the
That's right.
idea behind leadership being a responsibility. Now you
Yep.
have the responsibility more than ever to do the
Right.
things that you don't like doing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I go back to the definition of leadership, which is like our anchor word is influence, right?
Mm.
Which is all people centric. Like, and I think this is where we get confused between management and leadership. And that's probably a whole nother, podcast or season. But like we don't manage people, we lead people.
Mm.
That's my core belief. And we lead through influence and we lead these three things of like, man, if it's like, how do I provide purpose? How do I set people on a course to, everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. So my job as a leader is providing a context where people can contribute value to something that's bigger than them, and give purpose. Direction is that like we need to help people go in the same way together to be unified, to eliminate conflicts, which requires, to your point, man, that's a sacrificial work because that requires like a lot of tough conversations, a lot of discomfort. But the last part is the motivation. It's like, man, my job's to motivate people, to inspire. So to your point, like you can't provide purpose, direction, and motivation if for you, your job as a leader is all about you, you know,
Exactly.
it just doesn't
Exactly.
work.
No, it doesn't. And it's, man, that's something I've thought a lot about. And I think there has to be, in order to excel at something, I think you have to want to be good at it. Like there's a
Hmm.
little bit of selfish nature in that. Like you've got to want to be good. What's
Yeah.
what's behind that to me is what's important. Why do you
Hmm.
want to be good? Well, for
Hmm.
me, I want to influence everybody I interact with in a positive way, hoping that I inspire them to do the same. So this
Hmm.
idea of the butterfly effect, if you do it the right
Hmm.
way and you create people who do it the right way, then
Yes.
then they'll create people who do it the right way. That's why
Yeah.
I do it.
Yeah.
And also like I like being good at things. Like I hate the moon. I hate the moonwalk dance because I can't do it. Like so, you will not see me moonwalking because I stink at it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't
That's a
play
shame.
chess. Yeah, I know. I don't play chess because I'm awful at it, and I think it's incredibly boring. But yeah, I mean, people don't really. But with leadership, you've got to be comfortable doing stuff that maybe you're not good at yet, and you've got to take inventory and admit where you are. And I want to dive into something with you, Gabe. So the something I want people who listen to this, and I want people in agencies and courts that we serve to latch on to is this idea that everybody's a leader.
Hmm.
And now everybody's not a manager,
Hmm.
everybody does not have the title, but
Right.
everyone is a leader. And
Yeah.
the idea there is I think the world would be a better place if everyone showed up with these leadership qualities
Yeah.
that people at the highest level possess, right?
Yeah.
And that
Totally.
is the idea of influence, right?
Hmm.
If you're a case manager out there, or you're brand new in the agency and you're at the bottom level, you're still influencing people, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, it's not influence isn't about a title. It's about relationship,
Mm,
right? It's about connection, and it's what we're made for as people. It's the basis of our institutional life. It's the basis for our family life. Is relationship, and the way we negotiate relationship from a leadership perspective is influence. And so where that's influence in your home, like that's for those
mm,
that have children or a spouse or a partner, you know the people that you're doing life with most closely, your friend group.
right.
It's your I think if you just drew a map of your relational world, which that's a fun exercise. If listeners have never done that, that's you just draw out all your relationships in bubbles and look at it. And then the question is like, where do I have the opportunity to influence? And you can see these lines of influence going out. And to your point, man, we all have tremendous ability to influence.
We do every single day. And this is not once again, reminder, this is not about perfection. Everybody has
Hmm.
bad days, everybody has slip ups. But um, I think the more action you commit to intentionally becoming a leader, the faster you will realize those mistakes. And I
Hmm.
think the faster you realize those mistakes, the next step is realizing them before they happen and
Yeah.
stopping them before they happen, right? And taking the necessary steps. So, yeah, you walk into a child support conference and there's people at every level in
Hmm.
the audience. A lot of people in the room haven't really thought about the fact that they're a leader too. And
Hmm.
that's really what I want people listening this to think about is, man, you are, or
Hmm.
you aren't,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
um, you are, or you aren't, and um, I think everybody could step up a little bit. That's really the
Yeah.
goal is taking some self inventory and being honest with yourself, but not being hard on yourself. And that's one thing
Yeah.
you've really helped me with. Like it's so easy to judge yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then from an energy standpoint, because I think life and leadership's about energy management, and there's an energy scale. At the bottom of that is shame, and that
Yeah,
shame is that
yeah,
belief that there's something fundamentally flawed about me. And so that's the root of imposter syndrome. That's the root of, anxiety and fear and all these things that keep us trapped, right? That sabotage our best efforts at leading and influencing. And that's not where we want to live. And so when we judge ourselves, when we live in, a position of like being constantly critical about ourselves, we live in that bottom part of the energy scale and we just don't have anything to offer. Instead of, the upper end of that is creativity and joy and, all those things that lead to flourishing, that lead to all kinds of great relationships. But I want to go back, Jay, to something you mentioned about like the influence thing, as it made me think of a story. My dad, growing up, part of my leadership journey was my dad was plant manager at a cookie factory, and he had 5,000 employees, and he was a student of leadership, and he would he would talk about. I remember him telling the story of like, and he was a young guy when he took over, probably early 30s, and there was an old janitor that worked in the plant that had been there, 30, 40 years. That was the kind of company it was. People just stayed there. And he told me one time, he said, man, that janitor, that guy is the most influential person in the whole plant, 5,000 people. And he goes, people think it's me, the 32-year-old, hotshot plant manager, with the college education, all that. But the reality is it was this janitor. And the reason was is because he had cultivated trust relationships over 30 or 40 years. And he was the go-to guy, you know. And I thought his point that has always stuck with me is, man, influence isn't about title. It's about relational equity. It's about investing in others. It's about positioning yourself as an influential person for the sake of other people, and that has nothing to do with your title. That has everything to do with your posture and how you choose to show up every day to influence people.
man, I love that story, and it also a point I would like to make is it's okay if you don't want a leadership title.
Hmm.
That's fine. If everybody in the world wanted leadership titles, we would have a problem. Like you need people who really just enjoy doing the work. Like I'm happy to influence people positively, but I want to do the work. I really want
Yeah.
to be here doing the work. And I remember the moment where I realized not everyone was like me, and that's an important thing for everybody to remember. Not
Yeah.
everybody is like you, and I've always been driven to have to earn the title and earn the next title, and you got to be careful with that. But I just assumed everybody else wanted the same thing, and I
Hmm.
remember talking to somebody who worked for me, and I got pretty frustrated, and I said, "Don't you want more?" And
Mm.
he said, "No, no, I'm good. Like this
Yeah.
is stop." It
This
reminds
is
me of
it.
Varsity Blues where he says, "I don't want your life, Daddy."
It's a
But
good realization.
yeah, rest in peace, Johnny Moxon. He did pass away yesterday. Um,
Oh
but
man.
but that was an important moment for me because I was like, man, I was trying to help this person think like me, when that's
Yeah.
not the goal at all, right? But
Right.
even if you're somebody who doesn't want a leadership title, you still, I still believe firmly, and I think Gabe would agree with me, that you need to be in a leadership posture.
100%.
And I'd love to talk a little bit about, what we mean by that. I think, some of the things we've talked about today go along with leadership posture. The owning your wake,
Hmm.
um, being vulnerable when you need to be vulnerable, asking for grace when you need to ask for grace. There's also some other things like just setting the example. I mean,
Hmm.
it was last week when I have a 5-year-old son who jumped off the bed onto the ground, and then my 3-year-old daughter jumped off the bed onto the ground, and she got hurt. And I got mad at him, and he said, "Well, she jumped off," and I was like, "She jumped off because you jumped off,
Hmm.
right?" That's
Yeah.
so. We had a little conversation about leadership,
Yeah.
and the next morning, I asked my son, I was like, "Hey, what do you think about today? What do you want to do today? What's your goal today?" And he said,
Hmm.
"I want to be a leader." I was
Whoa.
like, man, like wow, that's
It's pretty awesome.
and it wasn't about a position. There's
Yeah.
no position in this house. Those are full. My wife is the CEO. I'm the COO, and those positions are all filled up. But that idea, if a 5-year-old can understand it, everybody can understand it, and that is
Hmm.
set the right example.
Yeah.
Right, that's part of leadership posture. What are some things that I've left out that you think are a good leadership posture to take for anybody, regardless of position?
Yeah. Well, I love the word posture because it's embodied. You think of the word posture, you think about like, how am I like physically sitting in my chair? How am I physically showing up? And so I think it, because leadership is holistic, right? It's embodied. It's not living in the realm of ideas. It's
Mm.
like living in the realm of like showing up as a human being in a physical way, and it physically, emotionally, intellectually, all the things. Um, and so I think about like having like, is my posture this, which is like, to me is like I'm defensive, or suspicious, or I think I have it all together. Is it hands on hips? Like I'm the guy, I'm the man, I'm, I'm surveying the troops and, here to issue my orders. Or is it really this, which I think you can see, but I think it's an open-handed, open-armed, um, which I think communicates several important things. One word we've used a lot today is vulnerability, that there's an openness, right? And I think that like a posture of leadership is a posture of realizing I don't have it all together and I'm a work in progress.
Mm.
I'm a learner. I'm on the journey with you. And and that there's an openness in who you are in that. I think the second piece is there's a posture of openness relationally, is that I think the best leaders understand human connection and like how do I know people? And I think an important word there is curiosity. I think great leaders are the most curious people. Um, and there's a funny thing I read the other day is that in terms of neuroscience, you can't be curious and anxious at the same time because it activates different parts of your brain. And so there's this power of curiosity that um, actually allows you to not focus on your anxieties and fears and shame and all that, and reorient you, on other people. And so a discipline, I think, in being, a great leader is being a leader who knows how to ask great questions. So just a practical tip there is, man, before every meeting, I challenge myself to write 3 to 5 questions in my little notebook. And the reason I do that is, and a lot of times I don't ask any of those questions, but what it does is it puts me in a posture of curiosity. And I wonder, it makes me start wondering about this other person. And so I think there's that element as well. So I would just say like a posture of openness, curiosity, vulnerability, humility. These are I think, qualities of effective leaders.
I think that's great, and I've found that the posture of curiosity for me, what it really helped me do was judge less.
Mm,
Right. So instead of, well, man, that person is being blank, it's, man, I wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going on with them because something's going on. Like that,
Right.
I think that's just such a different posture than labeling and moving on, which
Hmm.
may be the easiest thing to do,
Yeah.
is rolling up your sleeves and saying, I'm going to figure out what's going on and how I might can help.
Hmm. No, that's exactly right. Because I think if we're not curious, then we kind of are inherently coming with a posture that says, I kind of figured this out. I've kind of put you in a box already. I've kind of
Right.
already labeled you as a problem, or whatever. But when we're curious, we see like, oh, there's always a context. There's always a bigger picture. There's always more to the story. Which, by the way, I think leaders are also people who understand story, like understand they have a story, understand other people have a story, understand the organization's writing a story. Um, and stories, I think, are the way that we hold the complexity of people.
Hmm. Man, put that on a bumper sticker. That's that's even better than the one I saw on a Tesla the other day that said, "I bought this before Elon went crazy." I thought that was pretty
A
funny.
disclaimer: don't
Yeah,
burn down my car.
yeah, yeah. Not going to get political. Not saying it which way I like it. I just thought it was
No,
pretty.
just
I thought it was
it's
pretty
funny.
creative. One thing I want to talk about is, and I've seen this, and I was a product of this. Is promoting leadership positions based on individual contributorship.
Mm,
I've seen this. I've done this. I've seen this. I see it in the agencies and courts we serve all the time. It's like, well, that person's really good at support, so they should
mhm,
lead the support team.
right.
That I don't think we're ever going to stop that from happening. But my question is for the folks out there who are responsible for promoting people, what are some tools or things they can give those people to make sure that they are beginning their leadership journey,
Mhm.
not just relying on their position?
Man, that's such a great question. And I work with leaders across all kinds of different sectors of industry. And the problem you're describing, I see it everywhere,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that like you're really good at a thing and, maybe you're a really good, accountant or CPA or analyst. And then you get, you just keep getting promoted. And then one day you turn around, you're in the C-suite. And the problem is the qualities and training and all that stuff that made you really good at that original job don't necessarily make you equipped to lead people or to be a person of influence. So I think there's two problem sets here if we attack it from like, a problem solving methodology. The first is assessment. And I think I would encourage leaders who are in charge of organizations, in charge of org charts, in charge of hiring and promotions, to really be thoughtful about like what are the skill sets, attributes, characteristics needed in a leadership position, and like being really, really articulating that, and then creating a robust process to analyze like whether the candidates they're interviewing possess those qualities and to what degree do they possess it. And I think like this is always something, nobody's 100% fit for the role. Nobody. You're some percent fit for the role that you're in. So I think as you're thinking about hiring people or promoting people into leadership, the question isn't do they have everything it takes, because nobody has everything it takes. It's like what percent, of skills, attributes, qualities does this person currently possess? But the second thing is like what potential do they possess? Do they have the right orientation, but posture, like are they a learner, that kind of thing. So I think that's if organizations were more thoughtful on the assessment side and not just looking at, man, this person killed it in their role, and really critically analyzing, yeah, but like what's the leadership need, um, there, that'd be one thing. I think in terms of like your more direct question, like the training piece, which is like how do we equip people? One, because nobody's 100% fit. So whoever you promote into roles like that, they're not going to be ready or have everything it takes. And that's a huge miss that I see that keeps me employed as a leadership coach, is because so many organizations just moving so fast, throttle all the way, full tilt forward, you know, really aren't thoughtful about like equipping people. And so they just promote them, throw them in a role, give them a team and go, all right, sink or swim. And it's really unkind and unfair because nobody's prepared, is what I would say. Um, I think, I think of leadership training, a few different frameworks that might be helpful for managers and leaders thinking about this is I think through the paradigm of holistic development of a person. So head, heart, hands. So, head, like what do they need to know? That there's just knowledge here. And knowledge could be simple things like you and I have talked a lot about things like this, Jay, over the last year. It's like, how do I have a one-on-one
Yeah.
conversation? Well, that's
Yeah.
knowledge. Like that's not, if you're a reasonably smart person, you can do that. But if you've never done it, hey, there's actually a right way and a wrong way to do it. And so I think equipping people with knowledge of like, hey, here's how you have a one-on-one. Hey, here's how you have a corrective conversation, and there's a lot of how to kind of head knowledge kind of stuff. I think there's a hands piece, which is again more even deeper in the how to navigate things. How do you problem solve? How do you plan? We just went through that in your organization, and that like really smart people they just may not have ever done it. And so there's a knowledge part of that, but there's a like, let's get in it and, see how do you make a plan? And then how do you negotiate that plan when your plan doesn't work out and things like that. And then I think the most important part that most of our conversation's been about today is like, how do you develop the heart piece of it? And that's the realm of becoming. And this is the hardest piece, but the most important piece. So I think if you're promoting people into leadership roles, you've got to provide them with the help to come alongside them and help them develop in the realm of like their identity, their value set, and who they are as a person, because it's who you are that's going to leak out on the organization. And that's more important than what you know or what you know how to do is the character. And I do think that's developable through things like coaching, through things like mentoring and peer groups and things like that. And the last paradigm I would recommend is a crawl, walk, run methodology. Is that like when we're training people, you can't train people to be an executive in 3 months. Like there's kind of taking all the things that you want a leader in your organization to be able to know, do, and be, and then putting that in a training methodology that says, hey, there's a crawl phase. There's a like, hey, let's just expose you to some of these concepts. There's a walk phase. Let's have you like begin to implement some of these things. And there's a run phase where you're actually the leader who's like mentoring and leading others, in that. But I think having progressive training methodology is a huge important part of building a resilient organization where leadership's of value.
Man, that's so well said. And I think it's, if you're somebody out there who is responsible for promoting people, you can't afford not to give them some sort of leadership help and training. Maybe that's just with you. Maybe you go along on the journey with them. Maybe that's through some stuff they can read. Maybe it's through coaching if that's possible, but you can't afford not to. And secondly, if you're the person being promoted, if you don't take self-inventory and make a very intentional attempt to be a successful leader, then the influence and the ripple effect and the butterfly effect that you will have on people negatively, it'll blow your mind how deep that can go.
Oh man, 100%. Yeah, I think that second part is so important, Jay. That willingness to grow, that heart, that hunger. I think that's probably going back to the hiring thing, assessing thing. Man, if somebody doesn't have that, you could be the greatest functional leader in the world in your area of specialty. But if you're not hungry, to grow and learn, like you shouldn't be promoted into a leadership role because it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Well, I want to end with, because we could talk about this for so many hours that people would,
Yeah, we could.
people would be like, those guys need to get a life or a job or something.
Yeah.
But I would like us each, both of us, to do this. But starting with you, if someone is beginning their leadership journey, no matter what position or title they have, what are 2 books you would have them read first?
Man, Two books that have you read. That's a great that's a great question. I might have to think about that and put it in the show notes because my problem is I have too many notes. I think there's one called B 2.0 that's a great framework for um, like how to think about organizational life and planning and strategy. And it's more on the thought side of things. And I think that would be, a must read um, book, especially for senior leaders. I think the second one, there's just so many, and my head's spinning of like,
I
oh
know.
man, which ones would I recommend? But I think like there's if B 2.0 is kind of a bigger picture book, um, you know, uh, which is written by, and I'm just having a brain freeze right now, but it's the Good to Great guy. Um,
Oh yeah.
anyway, we can come back to that. But the second book would be Fierce Conversations, which we actually inadvertently referenced today by Susan Scott. She's the one who where I got the quote like "own your wake," and that book is about how to engage in direct, difficult conversations, but it's
Cool.
very practical. I've probably literally bought 100 copies of that book and given it to people I'm coaching um, because it's so practical. And I think if there's one issue that I see leaders have over and over and over where they just get stuck is just they can't have those difficult conversations. Um, and
Or they
I
avoid them.
think that they avoid them,
Yeah.
and I think that that's one area that like we all could benefit from a practical framework. How about you?
Yeah.
What's your top books?
I would go for people who have decided they're going to start their journey.
Mm,
There are two that come to mind for me that were wake up calls for me. The first
mm.
is The Motive by Patrick Lencioni.
Oh, that's a
Um,
great one.
Responsibility versus reward. Why do you want to be a leader? Really trying to uncover if you have the right reasons for it,
Yeah.
and if not, giving you a chance to correct it. I think that's a great one. And then the Five Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. That's the
Mm,
one. When I was early in my leadership journey, I read it and I threw it down and I hated it because it was so right and it was so
mm.
harsh for me to hear.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
that'll kind of get into the idea of um, your title is level one leadership. So if you're named a supervisor, congratulations, you're at level one of five.
Mm, mm.
And the reality is, a lot of people stay at level one forever. And I think
Yes.
the detriment to their organizations and to their agencies and to the people around them is huge if you stay at level one. So I think that's one to I think that's a good one to help you take inventory on, just to quite
Hmm.
frankly figure out where you are, and
Yeah.
then looking at the next levels to see the things you need to accomplish to move up. It's
Yeah.
We've talked about this leadership journey not having a scorecard. That's the closest thing to it I think you can get
Hmm.
on how to move up that leadership triangle. Well,
Yeah.
Gabe, this is we get to talk a lot, and that's a blessing. But today was a lot of fun. I
It was
appreciate you
fun,
showing
man.
up, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Such a privilege, Jay.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Our next guest is Laura Van Buskirk, who is the child support director in Placer County, California. A steward of leadership and a whole lot of fun to hang out with. She asked if she could bring her cats on the podcast, and I told her I was allergic, and she reminded me that it was virtual, so I said yes. Appreciate y'all listening today. Be sure and take self inventory and begin your journey. Thanks.